Valorant has come a long way since its launch. New agents, maps, and balance changes have kept things fresh, but let's be honest, there are still so many features missing that feel like no-brainers. Stuff that the community has been begging for, and stuff that other games figured out ages ago. From simple quality of life improvements to must-have systems, today I wanted to go over what Riot seriously needs to add to Valorant in 2025. First and foremost, let's address the elephant in the room, the replay system. We can all agree it is long overdue at this point, so I won't harp on about it too much. It just absolutely needs to be at the top of the list due to how many people are asking for it. It'd benefit pros, content creators, and just players looking to improve in general. Hopefully they're ramping up the production on this one, and we'll get to see it soon. While waiting for Riot to up their game though, let me show you something that does get it right: Opera GX, the browser renowned for its customization and the sponsor of this video. The thing that makes Opera GX such an appealing browser for gamers is what they call GX control. By allowing you to limit just how much CPU and RAM Opera GX can actually use, you'll avoid lag and FPS drops while still keeping your favorite tabs open, whether that's for lineups, music, or just seeing what the latest updates are. Here's a side-by-side comparison, and you can see just how much memory you save by taking advantage of GX control. There's more than just that though, let me show you the GX mods. Just like customizing your Valorant loadout, here you can completely personalize your browser. After heading to the GX store, you can download whatever mods jump out at you, with my personal favorite being the Radiant Agents one. Beyond the pre-made options, you can choose individual wallpapers, sounds, fonts, splash screens, even shaders to apply an effect to your entire screen. You can of course enable or disable every little thing from the mods menu in your sidebar. Last but not least, Opera GX now has ChatGPT right at your fingertips with their generative AI integration. Whether you need it to study, research, or simply summarize, this browser has you covered. So stop using basic browsers like it's 2020. Download Opera GX using my link in the description or pinned comment, and thanks again to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Okay, now the next thing I wanted to talk about that Valorant should add or just do more for is game modes. In the past, they've cooked, I'll give them that. Within the first year of release, we got Snowball Fight, Escalation, and Replication, but since then, it has slowed down a lot. We still have had new modes, things like Swift Play, I guess Premier, and Team Deathmatch, but none of them really changed the rules of the game like the initial editions did. There are some really simple ideas that I think could be a lot of fun. Maybe something like Earth from League, where abilities are just on super short cooldowns, or something else I'd love to try is a mode where your abilities are just randomized. Imagine you're on Jet, but you have a Yoru Flash instead of a Smoke, a Clone instead of an Updraft, and a Raise Rocket instead of Knives. Then you've got the other common suggestions like a retake game mode, duels, so a 1v1 or 2v2. There's just a lot of potential for game modes like these, and if queue times are a concern Riot have, then we can just cycle these game modes in and out. In a similar vein to that, there is also so much potential in Valorant when it comes to custom games. All Riot needs to do is put it in the hands of the community. There are plenty of talented individuals who could come up with some incredible things, whether that's content creators or just players coming up with modes with crazy rules. The options we have to work with right now are so limited, and we're missing such basic tools like adding stationary bots. Like, I would genuinely play a lot of a game mode where it's just bots standing in common angles to practice swinging and clearing them properly, but right now nothing like that exists, and I think that's a massive shame. Alright, so that's what modes people are playing and things like that, but what about something else to actually play for? All there is to grind for in Valorant is the Battle Pass or Ranked ladder, which is enough for some people, but I think they need to do more. And the easiest example would be adding things to the Agent contract or some other form of Agent Mastery. A themed rifle skin for each agent would be sick, and you know, another spray, player card, gun buddy, even a flex could go a long way to develop the lore for these agents. I also think if they do these additional tiers or just add something to each agent, that these more prestigious items shouldn't cost kingdom credits, but use playtime with the agent instead. That way you need to actually put hours into that specific agent and then get something to show for it. Like, imagine a Jet themed Vandal for playing 500 hours on her, or a Reyna themed Knife for 1000 hours. Then, while we're on the topic of additional rewards, I need to bring up specifically ranked rewards, because it is crazy that all it's been since launch is the same gun buddy with the number swapped out. It's a joke that for 5 years this reward hasn't changed. I'd hardly even call it a reward at this point, and there have just been no additions or improvements in this regard. This just leads to even less motivation for people to play the game, play ranked, because all you have to show for your work is the exact same gun buddy that you already have, just with a newer number. I do think one thing that's inevitable is them adding a flex as a ranked reward, and I do think that would be pretty cool. You know, you just literally whip out your ranked icon and get to spin it around. But beyond that, assuming that Riot are insistent on keeping Radiant in the game, maybe you could get some Radianite scaling with what rank you are, or at least just something other than the same rotating gun buddy. Even if it was a spray or a player card just swapping out with these rewards sometimes, we're asking for the bare minimum here, but the gun buddy is getting old. Beyond earning rewards, I reckon improvements can also be made to actually equipping and using what skins you already have. What I mean by that is skin profiles per agent, or at least some sort of way to have multiple profiles for your collection. I definitely wouldn't consider this a top priority feature, not like some of the other things I've been talking about, because there are some players who have few to no skins to benefit from this. It just doesn't make sense to prioritize, but it would be a nice quality of life change for people with multiple skins who want their loadout and agents to match. Say for example, I want to use the Helix Phantom if I'm playing on Viper, but the Nocturne Phantom if I'm on Omen. With a system like this in place, those skins should automatically equip as soon as I lock in that agent. They already have something like this set up for keybinds, and obviously I'm aware these are very different systems, but you can imagine getting a similar drop down like this in your collection somewhere and setting up which skins you want to use on each different agent. Another thing Valorant is sorely missing right now is some sort of honor or endorsement system. Especially considering the state of ranked and simply the way people behave in this game in general, rewarding good behavior and contributing to the team in a positive fashion could go a long way. I'm not sure what this would actually look like in Valorant, what rewards it would be, how you would rate players after the game, stuff like that, but I see literally no downside for adding something like this. Another thing that would go hand in hand with an endorsement system is a way to avoid getting certain players on your team. The way I'd love to see it implemented is similar to Overwatch, where after having someone in your game, you can just avoid them. Maybe they were toxic or just brought a negative attitude, and you simply don't want to play with them again. Now, I understand there would be concerns about queue times or even fairness when it comes to higher ranks for something like this, because you could just avoid certain players and sort of manipulate who you get on your team to increase your chances of winning. But I think you could simply fix that by making it either a very few amount of players on this avoid list, only 1 or 2 players, or even just making the avoid list only work for the first 3 to 5 minutes of a queue. That way, if you're in gold, you can safely queue up again without worrying about running into that same throwing Reyna. But higher ranks wouldn't get situations where you simply wouldn't find a game due to having too many people avoided. While we're on the topic of player behavior, I also wanted to talk about smurfing, although realistically this is a tough one. Smurfing is always going to exist in online ranked games. Unfortunately, that's just the reality, and I'm not aware of any games that have been able to stamp it out entirely, but I think Riot should open the discussion about it and at least acknowledge the issue and what can be done to fix it. People say they should add phone verification to ranked, which would be a simple addition because it's already in the game for Premier, but the bypass there is as easy as just getting a friend's number, even a parent's number. Like I said, smurfing is definitely a hard problem to fix, but let me know what you guys think Riot should do about it. Let's talk about the map pool now, because I used to like, or at least not mind, the system that Valorant used. When it was first introduced and it was just split that went out, it was fine, but it's becoming more and more frustrating as the number of maps in the game increases, and I've finally been radicalized by Fracture leaving the rotation once again. What is Valorant going to look like in a few months when we get another new map? Will we have 5 actually just be unavailable for ranked? What about in 2 years? Will half the maps in the game not be playable? I also think the argument of keeping it the same as pro play is a little silly. It makes sense for things like balance changes and agents, yeah, you want to be on the same version or client, but maps I disagree with. Again, especially if the pros are only limited to 7, that's going to become worse and worse for ranked. I know that the devs have discussed map bans in the past and said that they didn't want players being able to one-trick certain maps to get to a high rank, and similar to the avoid list, this could also lead to longer queue times if handled incorrectly. So what I'd love to see as an alternative is, rather than a hard pick or ban system, we could at least just get a softer preference system. Maybe if there's 2 maps you despise, let's say Abyss and Breeze, you can choose those 2 maps and have a lower chance to play on them. Then you can also pick a map or 2 you prefer, which you have a slightly higher chance to play on. Every time you get the map you don't like, maybe you get a guaranteed map you do like afterwards, or you're guaranteed to not play that map again for 5 games, something like that. That's just one suggestion, which I'm sure has its problems, but I simply do not see the 7 map pool lasting much longer, at least in its current state. So that's map bans, but what about agent bans? That's an interesting one, and I do think we're starting to get to a large enough roster where we could explore how a system like agent bans work in ranked. Even if both teams could ban 1 agent of each role, there would still be enough characters to make a normal team comp. Now that is an extreme example and will lead to some weird games to say the least, but it could really spice up the meta instead of just seeing Jett, Reyna, Clove, Chamber every single game regardless of the map. Agent bans would also give another avenue of data to the devs. They would see what people are banning, be able to determine if it's because they're too strong, too much of a counter, or simply unfun to play against, and be able to go from there and see what improvements are made. Lastly, let's go over Valorant's favorite new form of content, the shop. I've got another video talking about all the problems with the store, so go watch that if you haven't already, but what should Riot actually do to improve the in-game shop? Unfortunately, I just genuinely don't believe they'd be motivated to make many, if any, changes here because clearly things are working the way that they are. As much as people complain, skins are still being bought and profits are being made. I think we can overall group in the store with the night market for a similar sort of topic, and any changes to either of these systems would be welcome ones. The first thing that comes to mind is just increasing the number of slots in people's stores or night markets, alternatively adding a wishlist system to let people occasionally have some influence over what appears in their store. There is actually some hope on the horizon with the gifting system soon that seems to be quite close to releasing, as there were a lot more strings added for it in the latest update, and maybe we'll see some other updates to the store with the introduction of gifting. So in case you didn't see, we learned that you will need two-factor authentication enabled to gift to players. Your account also has to be a certain level and in good standing. There will also be a daily limit on how many gifts you can send. I am curious if you will only be able to gift players something from your 4 store slots, or how that is going to work. In a perfect world, I would love to see all the skins available to buy at any time, but I just can't see Riot doing that. So those are a bunch of things I would love to see Riot add to Valorant. Some of them are already supposedly coming, like the replay system and gifting, but some of them I suggested were just more niche quality of life changes and things like that. There are still a bunch of other smaller things I just couldn't talk about for as long, such as more spray wheel slots, a friend's toggle for the leaderboard, and of course how we can still not play deathmatch or go into the range while queuing. Either way, that's all for this video, but I am curious what you as a player think Valorant should be prioritizing right now, so let me know in the comments.